Remember this guy? Well, we're going to compare him to this guy. Yes, as a follow-up video to the original Sideshow Collectibles Michael Myers that we looked at not too long ago, I want to do a comparison video of how he looks like and what he stacks up next to the Trick or Treat Studios release of Michael Myers. Now, the reasoning why I didn't do this in the review of the Sideshows is simply just because I wanted to have the merits of that figure stand on its own. I didn't want to, throughout the course of the review, talk about the positives and the negatives and then literally compare it with another figure company's release, because I didn't think that that was necessarily fair. For Sideshow, I didn't want to have just the figure on its own represented and then talk about what I liked, what I didn't really like about the figure, and then keep it as a separate video where we would actually do a comparison back and forth between the two characters. That's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to overlook the fact that the Sideshow Collectibles did come include some additional accessories. To be fair, Sideshow did pack a lot more with their release of Michael Myers than what Trick or Treat Studios did. Trick or Treat Studios are kind of more the basic release of just the figure, a couple of hands, and the additional knife. Sideshow's, on the other hand, being that it was a deluxe release, came included with the headstone of Judith Myers, came included with the lit up pumpkin, a display stand, Bob's sheet, Bob's glasses, even an alternate head sculpt that went underneath the sheet. So I will say already, Sideshow gave a lot more with their release of Michael Myers. But to be fair, the figure was also almost $100 more than the Trick or Treat Studios release. And Trick or Treat is also releasing down the road an accessory set, an accessory pack that's going to give us all the things that came included with the Sideshow Collectibles. So we're not going to look at necessarily accessories because I don't think that's necessarily fair. Sideshow had a lot more, but they also charged a lot more for the figure as well. No, in this review, what we're going to be doing is comparing figure to figure, sculpt to sculpt, and coveralls to coveralls. And then you can decide for yourself which is the better Michael Myers. If you haven't picked up either one of these, which is the better Myers that you would want to pick up and add to your collection. I guess as really as a starting point, probably the best place to start, and of course the main thing, the being debatable topic between these two figures is which has the better looking head sculpt. So it would seem that Laurie's been busy with an axe again as she's decapitated Michael Myers now twice. Here's the head sculpt for the Trick or Treat Studios release Michael Myers. Here's the release of the Sideshow Collectibles Michael Myers. Overlook, please, the fact that this Michael Myers from Trick or Treat Studios does have a little bit of paint that's chipped off the end of his nose. I don't know if he actually fell inside the display cabinet, but I'm planning to get another one of the Michael Myers, so that's going to rectify the problem. I'm probably going to ultimately use this one with the accessory pack that's going to come with Bob's sheet. So no harm, no foul. I'm just kind of disappointed that the paint chipped off the end of the nose. I'd like to know really what was the reasoning for that. But if you can overlook that, we're going to look at just the head sculpts, the shape of the heads, the shape of the hair, and the paint they've done to the faces. Now, right out the gates, I will say, my own personal humbled opinion, I feel like Trick or Treat Studios has the superior head sculpt. While there's also room for opportunity to go in there and fix things up, and I certainly have seen some really talented artists taking the stock head sculpt from Trick or Treat Studios 78 Myers and actually painting and enhancing the sculpting, you got to look at it still from the basics of what the mold is. And I think when you're looking at it, the shape of the head sculpts, it's a better looking head sculpt on the Trick or Treat Studios release than what we got here with the Sideshow Collectibles. Now, Sideshow isn't completely bad. There are aspects to it that I like. It has what I seem to notice more defined looking cheekbones on the Sideshow release than what we got with Trick or Treat Studios. The mouth is also a little bit more defined here on the Sideshow Collectibles. And in fact, when you look at it like this, short of the fact he seems to have what I've got a friend that actually calls this weak chins, when you got a little small chin down below. Short of the chin, I actually think that the cheeks and the mouth might be a little bit better on the Sideshow. But I find like the head sculpt as a whole is better with the Trick or Treat Studios release. He's got a longer head. It actually looks like proportionally his hair's sculpted better to the head sculpt on this one than the one that we got here with the Sideshow Collectibles. When we look at the eyebrows here as well, the eyebrows look on the Trick or Treat Studios, granted it's not as defined as the Sideshow Collectibles, but the Sideshow almost looks like it's just a straight line, where at least on the Trick or Treat Studios release, it's more believable to think that that would have been his original sideburn area that he's just ripped off, or whoever's designed, of course, the mask has ripped off. The coloring between the two, it's a more smoother paint job, though, in the Michael Myers from the Sideshow Collectibles release. But still, a problem plaguing this figure, mentioned already in the review of him, is that there was too much gray. Not nearly enough white, not enough contrasting of darker colors to lighter colors. I think for that, Trick or Treat Studios has a better looking head sculpt paint-wise. Is there room for opportunity to improve this head sculpt? Absolutely. But I still think as a stock head sculpts, I think Trick or Treat Studios nailed a better looking sculpt. Maybe that paint could be awarded to Sideshow Collectibles just being a little bit more of a smoother paint job, but the paint is definitely off. There's too many grays happening here, and you can also see Michael Myers' eyes a little bit more. What they've done with the Trick or Treat Studios release mentioned in his review was the eyes are a little bit higher up. So I find when you've got the light hitting it, it seems to cast the shadow and make those eyes, at least the sockets of the mask, look a little bit more barren and empty. The Sideshow I've already had on display, and you really have to have it in the right lit conditions, because if not, you're going to see those eyes every single time, at least I do. The heads also, as you can see between the two, Sideshow's is a lot smaller. When you compare the two side by side and you spin this to the side of it, not only do you have more fuller hair on the 70 Trick or Treat than you do on the Sideshows, but it also has a much longer looking head, and it looks more proportionally in scale with the way that Michael Myers looks in the films. If you are curious also as well, we're going to take this head sculpt at some point in this comparison video. I'm going to put it on this body because I'm sure that's something that you guys are going to be curious about for the time being, at least comparing the two head sculpts. Short of, again, maybe just a few tweaks on paint on the Trick or Treat, I think Trick or Treat Studios wins it when it comes to the head sculpt of the figures. I realized when we were comparing the head sculpts that instead of saying sideburns, I may have said eyebrows a couple of times, but hopefully you guys knew what I was talking about. Let's move now on to bodies and the coveralls that he wears. And it's two really separate categories because one I find is better to Trick or Treat and one I find is better to Sideshow Collectibles. We'll start first with the bodies. Now, in the original 78, Nick Castle, who wore the costume and the mask, had a more leaner looking body, resulting in the coveralls or boilers that he wore in the film to look like they were just hanging on his body. They looked really baggy and bulky. For that reason, I would say the body proportionately to the coveralls works better with the Trick or Treat Studios release than what we get with the Sideshow Collectibles. I know it's a little strange right now to not see heads on tops of the necks here, but I find like the body is a lot better on the Trick or Treat Studios release than when we got with the Sideshow Collectibles. Sideshow Collectibles, the legs were okay. The arms were okay, but the torso I found was too squared off. It made it look too big and bulky. It looks more like Wilbur's body than it does Castle's. So I don't think it works as well for the proportions of the figure. And a lot of it may also have something to do with the head sculpt, because I've already taken the time already behind the scenes and I've switched the head sculpts around. I didn't really put the Sideshows onto Trick or Treats, but I did the vice versa. I put Trick or Treat's head sculpt on top of the Sideshow's body. And actually, it works better because the head sculpt looks a little bit better and bigger and in scale to the proportions of his body. That being said, while I do feel like this may be a more leaner looking Castle body, and as you can see, like the coveralls drape a little bit nicer here and looser on the body, it's a little more of a basic body than what we got with the Sideshow Collectibles. Sideshow Collectibles did give us the double hinge on the elbow. Trick or Treat Studios only has the single hinged elbow, but I've seen a lot of people going in there and changing the bodies out. Simply all you're going to have to do is just take the coveralls off and put it onto a different body, and you can get yourself a double hinged elbow on your figures. The thing about these coveralls as well is they're a little bit more of a darker blue. Now, depending on who you talk to, again, like the colors of the costume may vary, and some people say that they're more of a spruce green in the film. Some say that they're more of a gray color, and some people even have said that they're more of a dark blue. The Trick or Treat Studios, as a comparison, I'm going to grab the Sideshow Collectibles and compare the two. Color-wise, I actually think I like the color a little bit more for Sideshow Collectibles coveralls. It's not to say I'm still not bothered by the fact that the coveralls look a little too bulky, and a lot of it, again, is the body that's used underneath of it. If you were to, say, take this coverall and put it onto this body frame, then, of course, you would have a more looser-looking coverall, and I think it would look a little bit closer to the way that Castle looked in the film. Body-wise, I would say that Trick or Treat, for at least the more leaner, slender Nick Castle, I think works a little bit better for the proportions of Michael Myers on display. But I feel like the coveralls of Sideshow Collectibles might be a little bit better. Not only as well, when we looked at the Trick or Treat coveralls had a zipper, and the zipper would allow you to open and close the coveralls. On the other end of it, when we looked at the Sideshow Collectibles release of Michael Myers, they actually used snaps. I like the idea of snaps instead of a zipper. But again, I feel like the proportions, while the coloring is really good, the torso is way too big. Way too big if you're going to be displaying the figure. Now, when we looked at the hands, I'm going to do the comparison of what the hands are right now in the figures. Definitely more smoother looking hands with the one that we got from Trick or Treat Studios. Much more muscular looking hands that came included with the Sideshow Collectibles, but I didn't like the fact that Sideshow had the more darker pink on the ends of his fingers and more paler when it came to the plastic. It was also the same hands that we get on the Leatherface, also released from Sideshow Collectibles. So if you don't mind your hands being a little bit more veinier, I would say like the hands are sculpted a little bit better on the Sideshows than what we got with the hands here. Now, again, Trick or Treat Studios releasing an accessory add-on pack is going to be changing out the hands so that you're going to be getting a little bit more of a defined sculpt on the hands, as they were a little more softer of a sculpt on the original hands, as you can see. I would say the Sideshow hands are a little bit better in comparisons. Body-wise, I think you're getting a better looking body for Trick or Treat Studios. Granted, again, it doesn't have the double hinge on the elbow, but I think you're getting a better coverall when it comes to the one that came released with Sideshow Collectibles. Don't like the size of his body, but I think he's got a better looking pair of coveralls for him. Next, we're going to have a look at Michael Myers' boots. Now, in the film, he had the Rothko Jungle boots, which would have had the notable green portion at the top higher end of the boot and then more black down below with the treads. Now, these are the ones that came packaged with the Trick or Treat Studios Michael Myers. You can see there's only a faint trace of the green that they've added to the top, where I probably would have made the green a little bit more stand out compared to the black. I like the thickness of the boot here, but I do find like the boots are a little long here when it comes to the actual footprint. I don't know why specifically they made the tread so long as what they did, but it does result in the boots looking too long and almost not silly, but it does make the boots look a little bit too big. When we compare those to the ones that we get with the Sideshow Collectibles, again, I'll roll that up so you can see the difference between the two. The Sideshow does have more of the green visible here. I think the laces are a little bit bigger and better, actually. The sculpting of the laces, I think, are a little bit nicer. And I also like the fact that the boots are a little bit thicker right here. I do think, though, the boots, when you're looking at them side like this or facing forward like this, I find like they're a little bit too thick. When you compare them to the ones that we get with Trick or Treat Studios, I feel like the way that the thickness of the boot is a little bit more accurate to the way it would have been in the movie. It's almost as if you needed something in the middle of this. Not as thick on the Sideshow release, and certainly not as big and long on the original Trick or Treat Studios. Again, you can see the difference between the two here. Just opened up the coverall here for the Sideshow Collectibles because I also want to show you guys the shirt that's underneath. Not something really I did in the review of it, but it seems like he does actually have a full-length sleeved shirt on the inside of his coverall. Why I bring that to your attention is I'm going to put the figure down again. I'm going to bring in the Trick or Treat Studios release. One of the problems that people did have with the Trick or Treat Studios version of Michael Myers is if you open up the coveralls here, a little bit harder to gain access to. But what they've actually done is they've have a shorter sleeve. And I think they actually taped it around to the back of his torso. Now, I haven't fully taken off the coverall to verify that. I wasn't bothered by it because really the part that you're going to be seeing on the coverall anyways, providing you keep the coveralls on in the first place, you're going to get still enough of that visible t-shirt that even if it's not finished on the back side or if they had to tape it down, you're really not going to be seeing it anyways unless you actually take the coveralls off in the first place. I'm just going to zip things back up. And of course, one thing I'm going to also do too, because I know you guys would have been curious about this, I'm going to get the Trick or Treat decapitated Michael Myers there in place. We're going to just button up the snaps here. And again, I love the fact that the Sideshow release did have the snaps rather than a zipper. And then just snap those back up. And instead of actually putting back on the Sideshow Collectibles head sculpt, let's get that last snap in place. There we go. What we're going to do, because I know you guys would have been curious about this, how does the Trick or Treat Studios head sculpt look like on top of the body of the Sideshow Collectibles? Let's go ahead and get that in place. One good thing about it is it does seem to have, although the socket on the inside of the mask seems a little bit bigger than the actual ball peg that they're using for the neck, you can still easily get the head sculpt in place. Let's bring the collar up here. Bring it up on both sides. He's got a lot more hair, so it's going to be a little harder to bring the collar up like it would have looked in the movie. But just to put things in perspective here, Here's what the Michael Myers looks like. Just bring up his head just a little bit. But that's what the Sideshow Collectibles body would look like with the Trick or Treat Studios head. You know, it actually works a little bit better proportionately. Maybe the problem is something going back to originally the head sculpt for the Sideshow Collectibles. I did mention that the neck didn't seem long enough, like the mask wasn't long enough. When you take what I feel is a bigger sized head of the Trick or Treat Studios release and you put it on the body of the Sideshow Collectibles body with those coveralls, it seems to work a little bit better, I have to say. It still looks like he's a little bit too big, a little too bulky, but I think proportionately, it looks a lot better than the Sideshow Collectibles head sculpt when it was on its own original body. So really, in the end, there's positives and negatives to both the Trick or Treat Studios release of Michael Myers and the Sideshow Collectibles Michael Myers. Positives to the Trick or Treat Studios right from the beginning is the price point. I mean, they're very affordable entryways into collecting Michael Myers 6-scale figures. If you're new to collecting Michael Myers, instead of buying the custom figures that are usually going for $1,000 or more, Trick or Treat Studios, for these being just slightly over $100, was a great way to get into collecting Michael Myers. And really, the first time that I was able to collect a Michael Myers and have in my collection were the ones I got from Trick or Treat Studios. So you have to mention that, certainly. It did mean, as a resulting of that the Trick or Treat release of Michael Myers was a little bit more bare bones when it came to the accessories. I can understand certainly why the company didn't want to put so much into the line so far, trying to test the waters to see what collectors would actually be interested to get this line. And then ultimately that would mean that down the road, as we are going to be getting accessory packs. So we're going to be getting a different colored boiler or coverall. We're going to be getting that more spruce green color. We're going to be getting the jack-o'-lantern. We're going to be getting the headstone of Judith Myers, Bob Sheets, the telephone, all the stuff that came packaged along with the Sideshow Collectibles release of Michael Myers. The head sculpt on Michael for the Trick or Treat Studios release, I think proportionally not only fits the right shape of the way he looks in the film, but I think the coloring works a little bit better as well. The paint, to be fair though, on the Sideshow is a little smoother. It's a little nicer to look at, but I find it's way too many grays. And I know I said that so many times already in his review. There is a lot of too many dark colors at play here on Michael Myers from the Sideshow that I feel like they really need to bring a lot more whites in there. I like that there's a lot more whites on the Trick or Treat Studios of Michael Myers. And actually the head sculpt, hair-wise, the way that the sockets of the eyes are, and even like the more slender-looking face, look better on the Trick or Treat Studios release than it does on the Sideshow Collectibles. Now, on the positives of the Sideshow, there are positives, to be fair. Like the hands are sculpted, I think, a little bit nicer and a little more realistic than what we got from the Trick or Treat Studios. The boots, color-wise, and the way that the laces are sculpted look a little nicer. The boots are a little thicker, and that's one thing I'm not as crazy about. But I think the boots look a little bit better on the Sideshow Collectibles release than what we get with the Trick or Treat Studios. And I also think that the coveralls look better on the Sideshow Collectibles. I'm not crazy again about the idea of that sitting on a larger frame because Nick Castle, again, wasn't a big character. If it was George Wilbur that was wearing the suit for 4 and 6, then yes, that would make a little bit more sense to give him the broader looking proportions. I think the leaner proportions on the Trick or Treat Studios release work a little bit better, but I think the coveralls are better on the Sideshow Collectibles. At the end of the day, even if you picked up both of these figures, I think you're still winning the fact that we're finally getting ourselves Sideshow Collectibles and Trick or Treat Studios Michael Myers, that you can decide for yourself to either get both of these or pick one over the other. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think is the better looking Michael Myers. And even if you can, break down components to the figures, because like one figure is not completely perfect, nor is the other. I think the Trick or Treat Studios has positive points already mentioned, and so does the Sideshow Collectibles, and there's negative points for both the figures as well. So tell me down below, let me know down below in the comments section what you think is the better looking Michael Myers, and list the positives and the negatives for each of the figures. If you guys are also new to this channel, enjoying the content that you're seeing, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and make sure that, yes, you're coming back to this channel because we will also be doing other comparisons in upcoming videos, as well as a whole bunch of other reviews and other videos coming your way as well. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.